Hi, welcome to the VIP Home Podcast. I'm Dana Weitzman at VIP HomeLink, and today we have Aaron from FEMA. Aaron, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been with FEMA, your position, and then we'll get started with our questions.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Dana, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you on behalf of the FEMA leadership team. So I'm Aaron Levy. I'm the Director of Individual and Community Preparedness at FEMA. My team has the privilege of developing tools, training, gaming, and other actions to help the American people prepare for disasters. I've been with FEMA 12 years. I originally joined FEMA as one of our congressional liaisons, working as a liaison between the agency and the U.S. Congress. I've been in my current position for about 3 years. And I will say, thinking about your audience, that I was at FEMA for about a year when my wife and I bought our first home together. We had gotten married the year before, and I realized how much it had changed me because suddenly I asked to see the flood zone maps where we were buying our house. So things that we'll probably talk about later today, but I think we have the best mission in the federal government, helping people before, during, and after disasters. And I'm really looking forward to a great discussion today with you.
Well, thanks again for being here. You have
Absolutely.
a very, very important position, and to be able to educate all homeowners across the world, really, is huge. So thank you again. So we're going to start. And last year, Hurricane Ian completely devastated parts of Florida, and we've seen hurricanes make landfall in Texas and even the Carolinas. Where are Americans most at risk for hurricanes? And is there any place where hurricanes don't hit or can't hit?
Well, hurricanes, as you and your listeners know, can be deadly. The wind, rip current, rain, and flooding. And what often people don't realize, it's actually inland flooding that often causes the most damage, the most injuries, and unfortunately, the highest amount of losses of life. What I really want to stress is hurricanes are not just a coastal issue. In my experience at FEMA, we've seen damage from hurricanes as places far inland as West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and even parts of New England away from the northern Atlantic coast. So while hurricanes are generally a coastal event, the impacts of which can be felt very far inland.
When hurricane season, when it is, and does it start at different times, but depending on where the homeowners live? Or is hurricane season sort of just, it is what it is across the board?
Well, hurricane season officially starts on June 1st. This is Atlantic hurricane season and runs through November 30th. If you look at the data, we often see the highest amount of storms, the most storms occurring in that late summer, early fall range. But we've also seen deadly hurricanes as early to mid-June and as late as mid to late November. So really, it's June 1st through November 30th. But it's never too early to prepare. I know we'll talk about that as we go through our discussion today, Dana, but we shouldn't be waiting for the first day of hurricane season for homeowners to take preparedness actions to make themselves safer and more resilient.
Yes, absolutely. So as we know, preparation is so important when it comes to hurricanes and really any other natural disaster. What can be done inside someone's home to prepare for a hurricane?
Absolutely. Well, first thing I would say is a lot of the things you can do are already inside your house, from gathering flashlights, batteries, a gallon of water. We often say it's a gallon of potable water per person per day. I often recommend about 3 days worth of potable water per person for your household. We also want to make sure that you're gathering important documents. I'm going to come back to this throughout our interview to really stress this point. Quick vignette. I was deployed. I'm the Director of Individual and Community Preparedness at FEMA. I was deployed in response to a disaster about 2 years ago. And it turns out that all of the information for our pet, our dog, Sunny, I had all of it. And my wife had none of it. The insurance information, the medical records. And that was a reminder to us that in addition to building those emergency supply kits, we also want to make sure that we're organizing all of our key financial, insurance, and data about pets and medication in an easily accessible place. FEMA, with our partners at Operation Hope, have a great tool for that. It's called the Emergency Financial First Aid Kit. Last thing I'll say about this, Dana, building an emergency kit can be daunting, especially for a new homeowner who just bought a house. The advice that I often give people, do it in stages. Buy one supply every time you go to the supermarket, a can of non-perishable food, another a can of pet food, and over a month or two, you'll be able to build your kit.
Smart. So are there any tasks that can be done outside the home to be prepared, or do you just want to be prepared inside?
Oh, we definitely want to be prepared outside the home. If I was king for the day, I would create National Gutter Cleaning Day. I'm not joking.
Oh, smart.
Who doesn't love to clean gutters? I know I do. But joking aside, we want to keep those gutters clean, and as well as those all your drainage points outside clean. And then as you see a storm approaching, we want to make sure that we're putting away those barbecue grills. We want to be taking in patio furniture that with high winds, even not just a hurricane, in tornadoes and other events, those become flying projectiles, which often do tremendous damage to homes. And then also, if for those people who do set up generators, we want to make sure that you're doing it safely. We want to make sure that generator is secure to the ground, that it is outside, and you can work with your local community and your local county or city or village government, want to make sure that it's following the code and standards set forth to make sure those generators are safe. We've heard too many horror stories of first-time homeowners causing damage to themselves and physical damage to their families from having generators inside, and we want to avoid that at all costs.
So are you saying then, I would kind of gather from this that you would get those generators serviced before June 1st if you're living in, a hurricane area,
Or really in any area, absolutely. So I think part of there's one big message that your listeners and your viewers can take away for today is start preparing today. It is February. We're several months from the start of hurricane season. And whether that's securing all of that outdoor furniture and that barbecue grill, making that emergency family communications plan, learning your evacuation routes, starting to build that supply kit one step at a time, especially for those new homeowners out there. When you buy a home, you're setting up the house, you're taking all these initial steps to make yourself feel at home. Why not make building your emergency plan and putting together that kit part of that new home and that new move process?
Okay, so during the winter months, which we're talking about, right now,
Mhm.
you are saying, don't just wait, be prepared, start early, and just be safe across the board.
Absolutely. And you know what? Make it a family discussion. Because I know
Right.
for a lot of people, where do you start? You could go to www.ready.gov. Again, that's www.ready.gov. And there's a breadth and depth of information there to make your family communications plan, make your emergency plan, and instructions on how to best gather supplies and where to store them. But to really drive home a key point, make it a family discussion. Think about my family, Dana, and my needs are probably different than your needs. You might be caring for an old relative. You might have a neighbor who you help to look after. You might have a child with special needs or a spouse who requires a lot of medication every day. You want to have those discussions now to make sure that you're taking those steps to make yourself more resilient. And again, ready.gov is the place to go for that information.
Sounds great. So at times, hurricanes could require homeowners to evacuate. Do all homeowners in a hurricane zone need to evacuate? Is it smart to evacuate, or do you guys recommend to stay put?
Well, what we recommend is that people listen to the instructions from local authorities. It's not FEMA's role, little old me, or even our administrator to determine when people should evacuate their homes in the lead up to a storm. That
Okay.
decision is made by local officials. We encourage people who are able that if their local officials order a mandatory evacuation, that they do evacuate. However, equity and reaching underserved communities is a priority for this administration. And what we realize is that some people can't evacuate for a breadth and depth of reasons. What I
Right.
say to those folks and their families is reach out to nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations such as the American Red Cross, again, today, and say, I live in a hurricane-prone area. I'm unable to evacuate because I don't have access to transportation or don't have the monetary ability to. And those nonprofit organizations might be able to render you some assistance when the time comes.
Okay, so set it up today.
Set it
Don't
up
wait.
today. Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Please don't wait.
And if homeowners are able to evacuate, what does that plan look like? What are they taking with them? What do they need to do to really secure their home besides all of the things that we've mentioned? Because when you're not in your home, there's nothing more you can do once you leave.
Absolutely. So let me talk about some steps people can take. Number one, shut off the gas. If you have the ability to and you know how, I would take the step to shut off the gas flow into your home for those of you who have gas stoves and use gas as your as an energy source. Number two, you want to, if you can, unplug those major appliances, because if you do evacuate and the electricity comes on when you're gone, you could have those appliances running and running for days on end in a situation where there's already a demand for electricity in other places. So you
Mhm.
want to see if you can unplug those. What I would tell people not to do, don't shut off the water to your house unless you're directed to by your local drinking or wastewater utility. And that would generally be in the form of a press release or a briefing by the
Right.
local emergency manager in the lead up to the storm. Second part of that question, what to take, what to do. Again, you should have, as part of your evacuation plan, where's everybody going to meet? Is that grandma's house? Is that a friend's house? Are you evacuating to a hotel or a shelter somewhere out of the storm area? You want to start to talk about that plan now. Don't forget about those medicines. Don't forget about those pets. I can't drive home that enough. I know a lot of homeowners love and their pets are part of their families. Pets
Yeah.
require food. Pets require medicine. And you often want to look to see, especially if you have access and functional needs, someone with a disability, to make sure you're taking that planning into account as well.
Absolutely. So, are secondary hazards common with hurricanes, such as fires, electrocution, and how can homeowners really avoid and safeguard themselves and their homes from these hazards?
Absolutely. So oftentimes it's sad. It's the secondary hazards that often cause the injury and unfortunate times death. Number one is fire and electrocution from down power lines. Something that we like to say is if you see a down power line, call the local utilities as soon as possible so they can make a log of it and put that as part of their cleanup efforts. We're also seeing that as technology changes and more Americans are buying electric cars, we're also seeing that we have to start to adjust our thinking. So perfect example, I was in Florida for a recent disaster, and the island that I was on got flooded pretty severely, and car batteries and electric cars are actually very flammable. And if they're parked under or near a home, the home can catch on fire. So again, I know owning an electric car is a privilege. It's often expensive, but for those of you who do, as we embrace these new technologies, we want to keep that in mind. So that's part of the things that I would recommend.
Sounds good. So, we already talked about not to shut off the water, which I would honestly think that you would if you have that surge and maybe something else could happen within the home that you would want to prevent
Mhm.
any further water damage. So, I'm glad that you had said don't turn it off unless you're directed to by your local authorities. But after a hurricane does hit, where can homeowners go for assistance if their home suffers damage?
Okay. I'm really happy you asked me this question, Dana. If I could put in big flashing lights, document your damage. Photograph, 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 photograph. I know I'm happy that smartphones have become very small d democratized and most people have them, or
Okay.
just borrow one from one of your neighbors. You want to document. Number two, your first phone call, especially as a homeowner, is to your insurance company.
Yes.
Um, what whether that's your home insurance or flood insurance, a quick little vignette I love to say, if it rains where you live, your home can flood. So whether or not you're living in a floodplain, for all of those new homeowners and new home buyers out there who are listening to my voice and seeing my face, please look into buying flood insurance, even if your mortgage provider is not requiring you to do so. So again, call
Yes.
those insurance companies, document, call your insurance companies. I will say this, in terms of what FEMA can do. FEMA is here to jumpstart your recovery if and when there is a major disaster declaration in the area that you live. FEMA does have a program called our Individual Assistance Program, which can help with certain uninsured and unmet needs. We can get you into a shelter. We might be able to get you crisis counseling or get you into a medium to long-term housing solution. But our job is to jumpstart your recovery. So especially for those homeowners, document, call your insurance company, and please buy flood insurance if you are able.
Yeah, some people think that if they have, the regular homeowners insurance, that they're covered. And we had just talked about it actually internally the other day of
Great.
people getting slammed with not having the proper coverage. So, you have to make sure that line with your agent or broker is completely open, to make sure that all those boxes are checked regardless of where you live.
Absolutely. There's no buying flood insurance and having that as a complement to your home insurance. That's one of the most effective mitigation measures that a homeowner can take to protect their losses in the event that their home is significantly damaged, especially by water.
Right.
So thanks for echoing that message, Dana. We appreciate it.
It is important. So another thing, you were just talking about take photos. Are photos better than a video?
Either or is fine. I think videos are fine as well. But remember, I have been, to use use personal examples. After the disaster hits, there are going to be lots of insurance adjusters flooding into areas, bad analogy, coming to areas after the storm clears. And we want to be able to get them and to share with them as much information as possible. So just from a data transmittal standpoint, it's a lot easier to send photos than a big video file. But again, if they want to take short videos, I wouldn't recommend against it, but photos are important.
Okay, perfect. So is there anything we haven't discussed that you feel is really important for all of our listeners out there?
Thank you for that question, Dana. This is what I would say to drive home a couple of points. Make a plan, practice that plan, and learn that plan now. Number one, before hurricane season starts. Number two, gather those important documents. I've had some experience being deployed for FEMA after a disaster where people walk into shelters or they walk into our disaster recovery centers and they don't have anything. If they just had their insurance information and their medical information and their banking information shared on a file safely and securely on their phone, that's going to help us help them jumpstart their recovery. And it will also be really helpful to their insurance information for their insurance needs. Number three, disaster preparedness is a community event. One of the things that my team does is we want to make sure that we're being inclusive in the sense that if you're a family and a homeowner, we want to get those kids involved in disaster planning. There's a lot of resources we have for America's youth on ready.gov. We also want to make sure that we're involving grandma and grandpa and neighbors, and we're reaching out to our neighbors and our friends and our family who might not have the resources to build that kit and make a plan on their own to make sure that we're being inclusive. So start now, be inclusive, and get your community involved.
Aaron, I cannot thank you enough on behalf of VIP HomeLink and the entire team. Thank you. This is all great information. We really appreciate it.
Dana, it's been a pleasure. Ask me back anytime. I look forward to talking to you again. And for all of you new home buyers out there, congratulations. Buy insurance and make that disaster emergency plan.